Section 3. You will hear Sally and Mike, two students, and their professor talking about their classwork. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hello, Sally and Mike.
Hello, Professor.
Welcome to the third meeting of our after-school club, where we discuss topics from the syllabus in order to help you to understand your classwork better. Now, I hope that you've read the notes I gave you last week on the ancient African traditions, as this will be the focus of our discussion today. Who can tell me how they were able to recognize different stars?
Did they measure the distance between them?
No, Sally, I'm afraid that's incorrect. Mike, do you know the answer?
Historians used to think that the ancient Africans recognized stars by observing the manner in which they affected each other, but further research showed that they used the location of the stars in order to distinguish one from the other.
Well done, Mike. Very good. Can either of you tell me anything about the Wayaka people?
They have a lot of money, but do not trust banks to keep it safe. They believe that it's in their best interest to help themselves, not assist others. Instead, the tribe looks after their own finances and generate income from lending money to others in low-interest loans.
What problems do the Africans suffer from?
They used to suffer greatly from drought. However, they have now developed clever ways of overcoming it by moving to higher land. There are, however, far more predators in these mountainous areas, so it is vital that the Africans learn how to protect themselves in this new environment.
Yes, that's right. Also, compared to more developed countries, the Africans are less concerned with their international status, which I find interesting.
Very good. What else are the local people concerned with?
Unlike other, poorer tribes, they have plenty of nourishing food, and they are able to afford vaccines that prevent them from catching diseases.
They historically lived in the west of Africa, although later they were chased off their land by other tribes competing for food and water. It is their hope that they will eventually be able to return to their original homeland.
Why has the financial condition of the African people deteriorated?
Despite their modern transportation system, they find it very difficult to trade because their tools are not sophisticated enough to mine minerals from the land. They have permission to engage in these commercial activities, so once they have the right tools, they will be able to develop a very large income from trade.
Do you think that this new income will stop Africans suffering from starvation in the near future?
Unfortunately, I don't think so. They should be able to start trading next year, but they will only have enough income to start growing sufficient food and crops to support the local people in the long-term future.
Yes, that's correct.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now, listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
There are many charities from developed countries that are helping to ship food to African countries in order to feed the starving. Unfortunately, it is difficult to transport a lot of food to the right places, but Africans are very good at sharing and making sure that everyone gets something to eat.
African governments are also starting to pay more attention to the needs of their people. They have been directing a lot of money to help build schools in the more impoverished villages as a part of their new education plan, which is fantastic. This means that, hopefully, all African children will be able to attend school daily without having to walk long distances.
Yes, absolutely. Do you remember any other information from your class notes?
Historically, the tribes in Africa often used to migrate across the country in search of food and water. They would live in tents that were easy to dismantle and transport to other locations.
That's true, but now they are being encouraged to settle down in one area so they can establish colonies and build facilities for themselves, such as houses and schools. Some villages have even developed specific customs. For example, the Wayaka people consider it impolite if you do not bring gifts when visiting someone.
Bravo! You've both contributed fantastic points to our conversation. That concludes our session for today. I'll see you next week.
That is the end of Section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Section 4. You will hear a talk on the research of the sensory systems of different species. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now turn to Section 4. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second lecture in our series on animal senses. Today I'll be comparing the sensory systems of different species and discussing how these senses enable them to explore their environment. When it comes to the sense of smell, you may think that human beings have powerful and well-evolved sensory systems. However, some animals have a sense of smell that is far more powerful than ours. Dogs, for example, have a sense of smell that is 40 times greater than a human's and can distinguish 220 kinds of smell. Some animals can even smell odours that are undetectable by the human nose, such as carbon dioxide. There are also animals that have a relatively weak sense of smell. For example, there are species of beetles that can recognize the odours of certain plants but not others. The bee is an interesting example to examine in reference to smell because they experience this sense via their antennae. Bumblebees have stings, but it's rare that they actually use this weapon. When a bee feels threatened, it will use its legs to signal and warn others about the threat before it stings. This is called a signalling posture and involves the bee lifting its two back legs into the air. Within any hive, there is a hierarchy with the queen bee at the top. The queen bee is able to control the colony by monitoring its movement through her feet. The queen bee is the only reproductive female in the entire colony, and she is also able to sting multiple times, unlike the worker bees that will die if they sting. In the insect world, scent can also be used to facilitate mating, as females decide whether or not to mate with a male, depending on the quality of his scent. One such example of this is the female butterfly, who will only mate with the male butterfly that produces the strongest pheromones. This is how the species ensures that only the best genes are perpetuated in order to create the strongest offspring. Next, we move on to the hearing sense of beetles. Interestingly, beetles do not have ears, but instead use their feet to detect vibrations caused by sound. This is particularly useful when searching for food among the trees in which they live, as they are able to detect the location and movement of their prey by monitoring vibrations in the woodlands. The final sense that we'll be looking at today is sight. Snakes are a particularly interesting case study, as they do not see shapes and colours as humans do, but instead hunt their prey by detecting the heat radiating from their mouths. This makes them incredibly effective predators, as they are able to zero in on their prey very quickly and efficiently. From a distance, a snake is able to locate the heat radiating from a mouse, for example, and upon moving closer will be able to determine its body shape. This can help prevent the snake from attempting to attack prey that is too large for it. Once a snake has killed and eaten its prey, it goes into a state of hibernation, whereby all of its energy is directed towards digesting the food stored in its stomach. Depending on the size of the snake and its prey, this hibernation can last from hours to days. Once fully fed, a large snake will not need to eat again for the next couple of weeks. During the breeding season, however, female snakes will feed more frequently. The heat detection of a snake is very complex, and can be even more effective than the vision of a human. It not only uses heat to determine the location of its prey, but before it commits to hunt, it will also use the heat to calculate how much distance it has to travel in order to reach it. This prevents the snake from wasting energy hunting prey that is too far away to catch.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.